Patricia Behar. I'm from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil. I'm going to chair this session. The first one is Alicia Hauptbrook. It's okay?
Yep.
Yeah. From Fiserv of Areta, Georgia. From 4:30 until 5:30, and after that is Veronica Checkman from ISA, Buenos Aires, Argentina. You have 1 hour at least, and I will maybe 45 minutes, 40 minutes, and we are going to open to questions. Okay? It's okay for you?
Sounds good.
Okay. You can start, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's really great to join you. I just wish that I was in person. Unfortunately, though, just some situations beyond my control here is why I am not there in person. So, but I'm so glad to see a couple of folks joining in the room there, and getting a little bit of feedback. Let me adjust. All right, that's better. All right, can you all still hear me? Can I get a thumbs up if you can? Perfect, okay. There we go. All right, so welcome to Adapt to Learners. And really this session is about how to adapt to different learning levels in your classroom. So as facilitators, we want to be able to reach whomever is in our classroom, regardless of some of the knowledge they bring in. And so that is what this session is really about. Thank you for the great introduction. A little bit more about myself. I stumbled upon my passion for teaching after taking a detour through local community banks. I, was a teller behind the teller window, that sort of thing. And I really just naturally went into training my peers and then found it as a profession. And I've come to realize I enjoy the nuances of teaching different people in different settings, and I really can help you with coaching training managers, with coaching trainers in facilitation strategies. To tell you a little bit about the environment and the training environment that I'm in, it's a little bit different than some others that I hear about at conferences. So I am a part of a associate in compliance, associate and client performance department at one of the industry's leading fintech companies called Fiserv. Not to be confused with the drink company. Think about Fiserv as financial services. So a play on that, if you will. The clients, the people that we teach, the external ones, purchase our products to use in their financial institutions, their businesses. If you go to a small local business and you see Clover on the checkout machine, that's us. We're even in many sporting arenas right now. So if you're a basketball fan, the Fiserv Forum is the company I'm talking about. So it is our responsibility in the department to support clients on their product journey through a holistic learning process. We create the learning environment. We of course make sure that it's safe, that sort of thing, and try to create a place where people want to be. One of the things that you see on my slide here is that we don't enforce prerequisites, unlike college where you have to take English 101 before you go to English 102. We suggest them, we strongly encourage them, but we do not enforce them, and they are not required. Something else that's a little bit unique about our training environment is attendance is usually not voluntary. It's not like a major in college or an onboarding program that someone would regularly go through. It really is. There were decision makers at a financial institution. They decided to purchase our products, which are excellent. But of course, the learners in our room are the day-to-day doers of the job. And so it's a little bit different than a lot of L&D departments out there. Lastly, and this is important as I get through the content even more. Lastly, we're revenue generating. So when a client purchases our product, we might offer initial training free of charge, but continuing education, advanced training, all of that generates revenue for the company. So you'll see how that plays out a little bit through this topic. I want to take us back to what our department looked like in 2015. So our trainers were often, and just like myself, we didn't have a formal education background. I didn't go to school to be a trainer or go to school in adult learning, anything like that. Our trainers were often banking professionals or people who already knew our system. So they came from our client services desk, or what we call our implementation team that worked with the clients to get those products up and running. There was a major focus on training the system. It was what I would call system-centric, not necessarily learner-centric. We focused on features and we focused on system functionality, and it was a lot of field by field. And we're talking a page on one of our systems, one product, if you will, could be 6 different pages, and on those 6 different pages could be anywhere from 20 to 100. We would go through almost every single one of those fields. If you can imagine, our clients were actually really happy with our training. They walked away feeling like they knew everything there was to know about the system. However, as learning professionals, we also knew, even if they didn't realize it, we also knew how overwhelmed they were when they walked out of our classroom. We also knew that there was extreme brain overload. We had jam-packed their minds, and then we asked them to go home and decipher all that we had given them themselves. Additionally, we knew that we had learners who struggled with the basics. They struggled with getting up and running on day one. So not ideal, even though they were happy and even though they loved us. The more we found out about learning as a science, the more we realized, oof, we're not doing our learners any favors at all. Started on this journey to change to a learner-centric focus, of course, which is how it should be, right? So day-to-day use of the system, we leverage story-based learning. We follow a persona of someone who is in a bank and what they do on their day-to-day walk. We also realized, oh, there's this whole thing out there called andragogy, which, and I know from a learning and development perspective, there's probably a collective, you didn't know, but you don't know what you don't know. And so we realized we needed to build on prior learning, and we needed to focus on need to know information and not let's throw everything at people. The other key during this journey for change that we went on is that we found this book titled Writing Training Materials That Work. And what it introduces is what's called a cognitive training model. And it looks like I'm getting a message in the chat that there is feedback. And so it's difficult to listen online. Do we have any idea what might be causing that? Might that be personal?
You might try to turn speakers down here. I don't know. They're really loud in here.
Maybe. Okay. I apologize for that. Let's see if someone can work on that behind the scenes for us. So this book, Writing Training Materials That Work, is written by Kenneth Stibler, Michael Stanecki, and Wellesley Fauché. And actually, Wellesley Fauché, we had the opportunity for him to come into our meet our team and work with us. And the cognitive training model really says that there are 5 things in the training and design space. And really what you can do, if you're familiar with Gagne's 9 events, you could take a couple of Gagne's events and couple them together to put them in these 5. And that's select, link, organize, assimilate, and strengthen. Now, in the select phase, this is where learners, and really as trainers and designers, we should create content that tells the learner what to pay attention to, what to select. And so as a facilitator, and what's really pertinent to the practitioner levels is focusing in on what's called the what's in it for me statement. We call it the WIFM, and the you can do statement. We call it the YUCTI. And that what's in it for me statement simply tells the learner why this matters. How is it going to help you on the job? The you can do it statement is really just about giving encouragement when people need encouragement. So if someone is they're trying to learn a task that is very unfamiliar to them, we try to give them some sort of positive affirmation. Positivity works. And so some kind of you can do it statement. In the next phase in the cognitive training model is the building on prior knowledge. We call it recall and relate. So find out what the learner already knows, tie it to the new content. I have grayed out, organize, and assimilate, and that's really about the structure of the content when you're designing and how to present it. But I want to move us to the strengthen phase, which again is really important to the topic at hand, which is the different practitioner levels. So in that strengthen phase, of course, it's about practice, and it's about practice with feedback, not just after the fact feedback, but feedback as they are learning their processes. So this brings us to what we know today. We know that each financial institution that purchases our products uses them slightly differently. For the most part, they function the same, but there are differences that could change some of the day-to-day functions. We also know that prerequisites cannot be enforced. Whether it's from a service perspective, the client is always right. And so there's that balance there. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge again that we are revenue generating. So we typically don't enforce those prerequisites. We also know that what's in it for me statements and you can do it statements are not one size fits all. Think about if you are a grown adult, you are in a learning session, learning about something that you probably already know, and you're about to start a practice activity, and I say, I know you can do this practice. You're going to look at me like, I am not a kindergartner, lady. Like, you need to kind of back that up. So it's not as simple as just telling someone you can do it. And we also know, again, because of that prerequisite situation, not everyone has the same prior knowledge. So how do we adjust to all of these variances that are going on in the classroom? So I started doing some research. It was me and one of the people on my leadership staff that really was the person that came in and ushered in this change in this journey for us. So he and I, we put our heads together and we said, what are we going to do about this? We're not implementing the writing training materials that works properly. We have all these different, not just people in the room, but people that are coming in with different experience. And we simply don't have the bandwidth to train each financial institution on their own. So we looked at Bloom's taxonomy, and while that addresses various levels in learning, it really didn't give us what we needed to do as facilitators as far as techniques go. And to keep in mind, we're in a technical training environment, so we are asking people to do things, to perform in a system. And there's of course things you can do like varied practice activities, but we're not quite to that yet. So what we needed to do is techniques to be able to move people from, all the way from the knowledge level to the evaluation level of Bloom's and really anywhere in between. So at the same time, our company was going through what is known as SIT-LEAD, situational leadership, if you will. And this is from the Ken Blanchard companies. Of course, Ken Blanchard is the infamous Who Moved My Cheese author, 1 Minute Manager. And so widely accepted in the business field. And he has this management model that basically divides up your employees into 4 categories from D1 to D4. And based on where they are, that is how you adjust their management. So I'm going to show you a little bit about this model, because again, it's going to show you what we decided to do with our problem of so many different learners in a room. Basically, someone who is considered a D1, a development level 1. They are brand new. They have low competence, but they often have high commitment. So think about that person that just graduated college and they're brand new on the job, or the person who's starting the position new. Usually people are really excited day one for that change. And then as it progresses into the D2, D3 situation, you have some competence, but the commitment varies. So think about that person who's been on the job for a year. They know a good amount of the day-to-day, but they still need a lot of help when it comes to some higher level tasks. That can get frustrating. And then, of course, you've got that higher level that is known as someone who's self-reliant. You can give them a project and they run with it. And then really that's where that management part comes in. So for that beginner, you have to give them a lot of direction, a lot of step-by-step. For the person who, isn't as committed, you're coaching them, you're telling them why, you're encouraging them. So it really just moves through depending upon, where that employee is. So we took that and we thought about, what do we see in our classrooms? And I'll be honest, knowledge level seems like a gimme. What did people walking in already knowing? Confidence level 100% came from my experience. And what I was basing that on was I would get panicked people in the audience, if you will, in my classroom. I have to know everything right now, and if I don't know everything, then the financial institution is going to fall apart. Well, nope, that's not the reality. But that's that was my experience, and we needed to start somewhere. And so, and we called these practitioner levels. So with the different practitioner levels, and I'm going to go through this quickly because I really want to get you to the revised practitioner levels, which is really the more exciting, I think the more exciting content. So with that practitioner level 1, our goal for them is to transfer the necessary skills that they need on the job. So it's, again, just like with situational leadership, it was a lot of that, click here, do this, and then we start to explain why we're doing what we're doing. And then that moves into your practitioner level 2. So we want them to start to try to predict the system, leverage their confidence, to build up their knowledge. At the P3 level, those folks were the ones that we said didn't have a lot of confidence. So what we needed to do is confirm it. So what do you do in your world today? Well, that's exactly what you're going to be doing here. It's just this different step or this different field, if you will. So again, that too was a lot of getting them to try to predict what the system would do, because often the sentiment is, oh, I don't want to hit save. I don't want to break the system, sort of thing. And then you also in our practitioner levels have the P4, which is they have high confidence. We want to use that confidence. We want to build on their existing knowledge to get them to independently learn more about the system and troubleshoot their own problems. So we had some mixed results. As you can see, you can probably glaringly see some of the flawed thinking and our flawed hypothesis, if you will. And then but we knew it was working, and I'll show you why in a second. But of course, we had some mixed results. So I'm gonna take us through some of that. So these are from some of our facilitators. So they had a P3 that was confident. Now remember, the P3s are supposed to lack confidence in my initial theory. They knew everyone relied upon them. They could, but also they were seeing people who realized, well, I can't know everything. I can't learn everything. And they would take that in stride. And so our tactics that we said we should use for a P3 weren't exactly lining up in some cases. Then you would have a situation where we had someone we thought was a P4. So they had a lot of background knowledge and a lot of confidence that they already knew what they were doing. And this started coming out as some learners who were frankly angry. The system doesn't do what we thought it would. It doesn't do what we bought it for. I've used this for years. When we rephrase questions back to the learners in a coaching, for coaching purposes, is what this next line is referring to. But when I rephrase from the facilitator perspective, when I rephrased a question back to them, they got mad thinking the software was missing functionality. Come to find out, this person really didn't have the existing knowledge that we thought that they had. So we're treating them like someone, like a learner, a practitioner, and they really didn't fit that criteria. They didn't fit that box. We were really applying our initial theory wrong. So let's look at another one. I kept rephrasing questions back to the class. So think about the mechanism of, when a learner asks you a question, you rephrase it back, or sometimes you just repeat the question so you understand it, or you use a slightly different wording than what they used. And just the whole process of rephrasing that back turns on a light bulb for them. Oh, I know where you're going. I've got it. So that wasn't working. And in this case, a learner said, I don't want to ask the question. You're just going to repeat it back to me. Oof. We were not, in that case, we were not adapting to what they really needed. We were misapplying the theory. And then another one, and this one was my experience personally. I was teaching a class and I had someone who knew a lot about the backgrounds of the type of system that I was training. And during practice activities, he would ask well, can the system blah, 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 or does this, if I put in this, this, and this, will it work? And I would say, well, try it. You're in the middle of your practice. Try it. See if it works. After doing that a few times, someone who was sitting beside him said to me, Alicia, he just wants to know if you know the system. I was like, all right. Well, I didn't establish, so egg on my face. Clearly, I hadn't established my expertise. And so, and this is in front of, a class of 12 adults. And so I very quietly walked back and, gave him well, this will actually work, and this will actually work, and this will actually work. But what you're going to yield is X, and that's not remotely what you're looking for. And so after that, I stopped getting some of those crazy questions for him. But again, I had this theory, I had these practitioner levels in my brain, the box that they filled, that they fit in, and not quite what we thought. So we knew it needed revisions. But at this point, I've shared a lot of negative with you. And you're probably thinking, well, why did I come to this session? You're just sharing your negative results. And you also might be thinking, well, why even bother? Just throw it out. But we knew that it worked, and this is why. What you're seeing is a graph of what we refer to as cases. So whenever a client has a question about our system, a problem that they can't figure out, they create a case to our online help or client services. It's the equivalent of calling the 1-800 number, on the back of your debit card when something's going wrong. Our clients call in and create a case with us. So what you're seeing is a comparison of a facilitator who has gone through our certification program. Now we have an award-winning certification program, and the backbone of that program is this practitioner level theory. And so without we couldn't have such a robust and such a program that works without the practitioner level theory. They really are hand in hand and really married together, if you will. And what we saw is clients who had a certified facilitator who used the practitioner level methodology had 46% less cases from clients that were taught by a facilitator who wasn't certified and who wasn't using that practitioner level methodology. And we tried as much as we could to compare apples to apples, to trainers who are just as knowledgeable, just as seasoned, and with the same product, but that one that was certified, that was using practitioner levels, the financial institutions that they trained needed half of the help that that other financial institutions needed. So because we saw that drastic, that major difference of results, and we're talking about, this leading to thousands of calls and nearly $1 million in savings, that we knew we were onto something, but we knew it needed to be tweaked. At this point, a lot of us started learning about andragogy, and really andragogy, or adult learning theory, if you're not familiar, is based on Malcolm Knowles' research about how adults learn. And there are 5 things that Malcolm Knowles uncovered about assumptions, he called them, that we assume about adults, things we could assume. And it was, one of them was self-concept. So that seemed, the self-concept one seemed to support my initial thought that, okay, well, confidence really does come into play here, but we knew it didn't fit our practitioner level. Then we looked at readiness to learn. And that seemed to line up with people who had a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. If I have a growth mindset, I want to learn new things. I'm often excited about change, or at least not completely derailed by change, right? However, some people just don't have a growth, nor do they have a fixed mindset. If something changes, okay, I'm going to roll with it, but they're not the people that's like, yes, I'm in there with you. I'm going to make that change with you. So then we looked at motivation to learn. Knowles' theory of motivation states that adults really are motivated by internal factors. So let's say, for example, I want a new language to enhance my career. I want to go on the international stage, and I really need a second language. Or let's say I'm going to take a trip to Ireland, and I want to know the local customs so I don't make a fool of myself or, God forbid, offend anybody. And so that internal motivation is more often than not what drives adults. Now, we could make the argument that your job depends on learning our software, ergo that's external. So with our department, we really felt like that readiness to learn is what we could adjust in the classroom, what we could help our learners with. And that led to us revising our practitioner levels. This is a very busy slide. I'm going to break this slide down. This is going to be, and go through the different practitioner levels. I hope that you all will have access to the article that accompanies this session. This is in that, this graph that you're seeing, or table rather, is a part of that article. So what we're looking at is, we're looking at knowledge levels still. The original goal that we had for practitioner levels didn't change. And our initial support, what we're now calling our standard support, isn't changing. What we added, though, is the readiness to learn. And if they have a high readiness to learn, here's how we need to coach them differently. If they have a low readiness to learn, here's what supplemental coaching we need to bring in and look at. And at this point, this is, if we were all together, I would make sure, I'm going to hope that we are together in where we're going with this. So as we break down the different practitioners, I hope, and I go into a little bit more detail, I hope you can see what we're doing here. So our practitioner 1 is new to the subject and inexperienced in related subjects. So the first thing our facilitators need to do is to figure out what's a P1, P2, P3, or P4. And we do that through simple get to know you at the beginning of the session, or sending out an email prior to the session and saying and asking, what's your previous experience? So that's how we go about identifying which practitioner level they are. It's also worth noting that some of our software, some of our systems, you could be depending upon the class, you could be a P3 in one and a P in one subject, a P1 in another subject. So it also takes, on the facilitator side, just really paying attention to the cues that the learners give you. So our goal for the P1 is we need to get them the day 1 skills. Our standard coaching is to lead them, to take them through the clicks by clicks, provide them with why, because we want to start building that foundational knowledge of the system. And then here's where the readiness to learn comes in. So if they have a high readiness to learn, we see that through they ask a lot of questions, they're eager to start a practice. With that, we give them standard what's in it for me statements, standard you can do it statements. If they have a low readiness, we see that as they're quiet in class, they're tentative in exercises. For those, we want to give them additional what's in it for me statements. If the content is harder, but I know that this is going to help me perform better on my job, then I'm going to stick with the hard content. I'm going to figure it out. So we want to do that. If their knowledge level is so low, a lot of times, again, we're talking about financial institutions, I can ask them a question about their current financial institution, how their current bank does something. If they don't have that experience, I can try to relate it to, we all have some kind of you can't see because I've got my background. I'm holding up my phone. We all have some kind of app on our phone that is banking or financial related. So it really is about digging deeper with that individual and finding out what we can relate it to. Then you have your practitioner 2, your P2. Again, they have some knowledge or prior experience, but they're not always sure of how that knowledge or experience transfers. So again, if I put this into financial terms, we're talking about the difference between someone who needs a checking account versus needing a loan. So two completely different financial mechanisms or what we would call products. Our goal for them is we want to bring out that existing knowledge and relate it to the new, because there's a lot of knowledge there. You just don't know quite how it fits. With them, we want to do directive coaching. Ask them, what do you think you're going to do? Why would you do that next step? If we see that they have messed up, they have an error on the page, we ask them, what steps did you take to get there? And then we can uncover where they went wrong and coach accordingly. So again, with that readiness to learn, how we decipher that is if it's high readiness, they ask a lot of questions. It really doesn't change from that P1. They ask a lot of questions. They're eager to start the exercises. With them, we also give them standard what's in it for me statements, and just start asking more questions than what we would a P1. The low readiness to learn, again, looks like a little more quiet. We try to find that one-on-one recall, and with them, try to bring out more real-world examples for them. And this is where it really starts to change, is when we get to that P3 level. So for them, they have experience with either this product or a product very similar, and they often need beyond the basics. So before, these were the ones that we said had low confidence. Our goal didn't change. We want to confirm their existing knowledge. We want to get them to the P4 level where they're able to do more troubleshooting on their own and they don't need as much hand-in-hand support. We get them to predict the system. That's how we coach them in those practice times. What should you do next? Why? Ask, confirm the correct answers. When they give a wrong answer, okay, tell me about your thinking. Tell me what you're thinking with that. And again, you can very easily see where, I can see why you were thinking that way, but here's how you want to think about it. Look at it through this different scope, and it gets them right back on track. How we recognize them is with high readiness to learn. They're asking a lot of questions. They're asking how the system works. They don't just want to know, click here and put in A, B, or C. Why A versus B? Not even just why A. Why A versus B versus C? They want to know all of the, those kind of ins and outs. With them, we give them additional practice activities and variables to work through. Okay, you've mastered whatever A is. Let's look at the slightly different variant and how would you make that work for your clients? On that low readiness to learn side, they're still panicked. We still see some of those panicked individuals of, I need to know everything right now. This is where we build their confidence through additional you can do it statements. And they sound a lot like, Susie, tell us what you did tell us how your last system worked. And they give us a few lines. That hasn't changed. That's exactly how it's going to work in this system. It's a different screen. It's just this one field. Oftentimes, thankfully, we have phenomenal systems. And I can say, Susie, you won't have to do any of that anymore. You put this one field incorrectly, it handles all of that for you. So it does help that a lot of times our clients are coming from a system that was a bit archaic. So we got that going for us for sure. Remind them of the what's in it for me. Remind them of how it's going to help them. And also remind them their job isn't changing, that we're here to support them. We're not, it's training isn't one and done. You get to come back. You get to ask us more questions. So that's where we are with those P3s. And then lastly, it's those P4s. So this is the group that's coming in that has a lot of what I would call hand-me-down knowledge. The person that trained them was trained by a person that, no one ever actually came to a class. Or for whatever reason, they couldn't come to class when they started, and then time goes by and they've been, figuring things out on their own. And that's really, for a technical trainer, pretty intimidating, because you'll get people who know some really, really advanced things, but they're missing basics and foundation. And after a while, you realize how much that foundational knowledge is affecting how much work they're having to do with those advanced things. They didn't know it had all these shortcuts is what I'm saying. So with them, we want to leverage the skills they already have, and we want to get them to become an even more independent learner, but also teach them how to troubleshoot their own problems. That is where that caseload that I showed you earlier, where we had that drastic decrease, because not only are we teaching people how to use the system, adjusting to them in their room, we're also learning, we're also teaching them, here are the resources at your disposal, so you don't have to pick up the phone and wait on someone to answer it. It's a win-win for the client. It really is a win for us. So we're teaching that independent thinking as well. So with them, a lot of times it's self-discovery. They get through the exercises really, really quickly. We give them a variable. We give an example, a variable of the same task, but much more complicated with more ins and outs to it. Oftentimes, these are the folks that we're seeing partnering up. We don't have to recommend it, but they're partnering up with whomever is sitting beside them and helping them through the activity. So we recognize them. Oftentimes, they're asking programming, behind the scenes questions. They're answering other people's questions in the room when they come up. To keep them engaged with them, it's not about getting them to learn, right? They know a lot. With them, a lot of it is, how do I keep you engaged in my class? And that's through those additional practices, getting them to help a neighbor, getting them really starting to teach them how to read the errors that the system is providing. On the low readiness to learn scale, they're skeptical about functionality. You know what? I don't think it can do that. You know, that sort of thing. They share a lot of negative experiences about the product. And what we find is that base knowledge, well, if you think about how the system works at the most basic level, then we start to see the light bulbs go, oh, I know what I've been doing wrong this entire time. Exactly. So we really establish our expertise instead of rephrasing questions back to them to get them to think. Actually finding with that P4 to answer the question more directly, like what you do with the P1. Because think about it, if they have some ability to learn on their own, not some, a lot, they have ability to troubleshoot some things. The reason why they're asking the question isn't because they don't want to find the answer. It's because they've looked so long, they're frustrated. So that was really kind of a turn me on my head moment of they really need me to just answer the question. So we you know, really looked at it. We have it in play with some of our certified facilitators. We just revised this earlier this year. So it's getting some traction. It's working so much better. It makes so much more sense for our facilitators. It lines up with what they're seeing and it's resonating with our learners. Some other things to consider just about practitioner levels. The practitioner level theory can be applied in most learning situations, but is ideal for adult learners in a technical training environment. So environments that also include hands-on practice, because a lot of that coaching piece is during those practices. It's often recommended for smaller class sizes. So we can do 10 to 12. When you start getting over 12 learners in a room, it really becomes unwieldy to do this sort of customization per person. And now this is still, you know, standard instruction time. So it's not like I'm training 10 completely different classes at once. We're talking, you know, throw in an extra phrase here type of thing. But still, because you're really wanting to learn about the existing knowledge of the people that are in your room and then adapting throughout that class. And a lot of our classes are at least 2 days. The longest one we have is 3.5 days. And so if you really get beyond 10 learners, it's hard to keep that working knowledge of your product, of your facilitation, and on practitioner levels. Something else to consider is we notice that as, you know, the class goes on and people start to reach capacity, they just need the answer sooner. And so we try to just pick up on those cues. You can see it on someone's face when they're tired, right? And so we're looking for those things. However, given the evidence I talked about before, and with the revised practitioner level theory and practice support methodologies, which again is based on readiness to learn from adult learning theory, it's reasonable for us to believe, and we do believe, that the theory works for the betterment of our learners and their learner retention. I highly recommend additional testing. I would love to do this. The ideal testing environment would be a controlled environment where trainers could take multiple groups of similar demographics. One group is taught with the supplemental support, the other group is taught without. However, given the nature of our clients and what we do, we simply can't set up that type of test situation when we feel strongly and that evidence tells us that this is really working for us. But if there's anyone out there that would like to, I love coming to these conferences, and there are so many PhDs and people that are in the field of studying and that sort of thing. If there's any of you out there that want to partner and do some additional research with me, I welcome that.
Alicia?
With that, yep. I was about to say, with that, do you have any questions? And here's my contact information as well.
Thanks a lot for your presentation. So interested. We only have like 3 minutes to questions. I think you didn't see me that I input like 5 minutes, 1 minute, time out. No.
I did not. I'm so sorry.
You are very motivated with your presentation. So nice. Somebody have questions from the audience? No questions?
Was there any from the online? I don't know.
Yeah, online there's no person.
No questions online. I'm going to
yeah, I think
one question for you. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
How many clients do you have to this experience of training, and when happened? And maybe you can answer also, what's the difference for you or the company for training and how to learn?
So we train approximately 1,000 clients per year. This particular, what we tested with this one for this theory was more like 300. I'm getting some feedback on my side, so let me turn down the speaker. More around 300. So I would say 30% of the population that we train as a whole. And your second question, if I heard you correctly, was what type of like what was it? What we're training or our training environment? You're on mute.
You train your clients, yes, and after that you present what is andragogy, that it's how the adults learn. Do you think that it's a difference between train and learn, or is the same for you and the company?
The principle that I talked about earlier, the cognitive training methodology that I talked about from writing training materials that work, is really based in how adults learn. And so we as a L&D team, the trainers, were starting to learn more about that. What we actually train our clients is banking software. And so through this journey, we have employed andragogical principles into our training through the writing training materials that work methodology. And we can tie like the what's in it for me statements and you can do it statements. We can tie that into, and several of the other techniques that we employ, tie that into andragogy. In fact, one of the internal classes that I train to get our facilitators onboarded actually ties, here's the techniques that we use, here's how it ties in to support how adults learn.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your very interesting presentation, Alicia.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank
Bye-bye.
you.